Dark chocolate has one of the healthiest reputations in America. People eat it for antioxidants, heart health, even brain function. But recent testing uncovered something disturbing hiding inside some of the most popular bars on store shelves: lead, cadmium, contamination concerns, and misleading healthy branding that fooled millions of consumers. And in some cases, the chocolate marketed as the cleanest option raised the biggest red flags of all. Tonight, we're exposing 10 dark chocolate brands you may want to avoid, and 5 that are actually safer if you still love chocolate. Number 10. Trader Joe's Dark Chocolate. Walk through the candy aisle at Trader Joe's, and it's easy to see why shoppers trust their dark chocolate. Organic labels, minimalist packaging, and lower prices create the impression that these bars are cleaner and healthier than mainstream candy. But when Consumer Reports published heavy metal testing on popular dark chocolate products in 2022, several shoppers were caught off guard after certain Trader Joe's bars raised concerns for lead and cadmium exposure. What many consumers still don't realize is that organic certification doesn't automatically mean low heavy metals. Lead and cadmium can enter cacao naturally through contaminated soil where cocoa trees grow. That means a chocolate bar can meet organic standards while still containing elevated metal levels. Dark chocolate becomes even more complicated because higher cocoa percentages may increase cadmium concentration depending on sourcing and processing. For families buying dark chocolate as a healthier snack, that contradiction feels unsettling. Consumers trusted the organic label without realizing it didn't guarantee contamination testing. The packaging looked safe. The branding felt responsible. But for many shoppers, the reports changed the way they looked at dark chocolate permanently. Number 9. Lindt Excellence. For decades, Lindt built its reputation around Swiss luxury. Elegant packaging, rich texture, and high cocoa percentages made Lindt Excellence bars feel more sophisticated than ordinary candy. Consumers weren't just buying chocolate, they were buying the idea of making a smarter, healthier choice. Then Consumer Reports testing linked some Lindt dark chocolate bars to elevated lead and cadmium concerns, creating headlines that shocked longtime customers. Suddenly, one of the world's most respected chocolate brands was being discussed alongside contamination warnings. The controversy also exposed a larger issue affecting dark chocolate overall. Higher cocoa concentrations may sometimes increase heavy metal exposure depending on the cacao source. That revelation hit especially hard for consumers who had started eating dark chocolate daily for possible antioxidant and heart health benefits. Lindt looked premium. The chocolate snapped perfectly. The texture felt luxurious. Everything about the brand suggested quality and safety. But the testing reminded consumers that expensive packaging can't show what's happening inside the cacao itself. For many shoppers, the illusion of premium equals safer disappeared overnight. Number 8. Hershey's Special Dark. For generations, Hershey's represented American chocolate itself, and when consumers wanted something that felt slightly healthier or more mature, many reached for Hershey's Special Dark. The darker wrapper and richer flavor gave the impression that this was a smarter alternative to ordinary candy bars. But Hershey's Special Dark became one of the most talked about products in the Consumer Reports investigation after testing revealed some of the highest lead readings among the bars analyzed. For many consumers, that was the moment the controversy stopped feeling distant. This wasn't an obscure luxury chocolate brand. This was Hershey's, one of the most trusted food companies in America. The reports also exposed how little most shoppers understand about heavy metals in food. Many consumers assume products sold nationwide must already pass strict contamination screening. But with cacao, lead and cadmium occur naturally in the environment, making the issue far more complicated than most people realize. Still, once headlines connected Hershey's Special Dark to elevated lead concerns, public perception changed fast. Millions of consumers suddenly stopped looking at that dark brown wrapper the same way. Number 7. Green and Black's Organic. For years, Green and Black's built its identity around one word: organic. Dark packaging, earthy colors, and fair trade messaging created the impression that this wasn't just candy. It was responsible chocolate. Health-conscious shoppers saw the brand as a cleaner alternative to heavily processed mainstream products. But the dark chocolate controversy exposed a problem many consumers never considered. Organic certification and ethical branding don't automatically guarantee low contamination levels or extensive heavy metal testing. Consumers often assume labels like organic, natural, and fair trade mean every possible safety concern has already been checked. In reality, those labels mainly focus on farming practices and ingredient standards, not necessarily lead or cadmium exposure. That distinction matters because dark chocolate buyers are often the exact consumers eating chocolate most frequently. A square after dinner, a daily serving for antioxidants, a healthier replacement for dessert. But once contamination reports started spreading online, many shoppers realized they had confused ethical branding with scientific transparency. The entire organic halo surrounding dark chocolate suddenly became much harder to trust. Number 6. Ghirardelli Intense Dark. At first, most consumers assumed the dark chocolate controversy only involved a few isolated brands, but the deeper people looked into the issue, the more one uncomfortable pattern kept appearing. In some cases, higher cocoa percentages were linked to higher cadmium concerns, and that changed the way shoppers looked at nearly every premium dark chocolate bar on the shelf. Brands like Ghirardelli became part of a much larger conversation surrounding cacao sourcing and contamination variability. Unlike highly processed milk chocolate, dark chocolate contains larger amounts of cacao solids, which means contaminants absorbed from soil may become more concentrated depending on where the beans were grown. Some regions naturally produce cacao with higher cadmium levels, especially in parts of Latin America where volcanic soil contains elevated mineral concentrations. For consumers, this created a psychological shift. The exact feature marketed as healthier, more cacao, was now being connected to contamination concerns. Suddenly, people started staring at labels differently. 70% cocoa no longer sounded automatically healthy. 85% sounded uncertain. And because contamination can vary between growing regions and suppliers, many consumers realized there was no easy way to judge safety just by looking at the wrapper. Number 5. Hu Dark Chocolate. Few brands exploded faster in the health food world than Hu. Minimal ingredients, paleo-friendly marketing. No refined sugar, no soy, no emulsifiers. The bars looked less like candy and more like products pulled from a high-end wellness clinic. Influencers promoted them constantly, and health-conscious consumers happily paid premium prices, believing they were buying one of the cleanest chocolate options on the market. But the dark chocolate controversy exposed something larger than just one brand. The wellness industry itself often runs on trust more than verification. Consumers see words like clean, natural, and simple ingredients, and assume extensive safety testing must already exist behind the scenes. In reality, many shoppers never actually see contamination reports, sourcing details, or batch testing data before purchasing expensive wellness products. That disconnect became increasingly important once heavy metal testing in chocolate started dominating headlines. Consumers suddenly realized premium pricing doesn't automatically guarantee cleaner sourcing. Expensive packaging doesn't prove lower contamination, and influencer marketing doesn't replace transparency. For years, the wellness industry trained shoppers to believe cleaner branding meant cleaner food. But for many consumers, the dark chocolate debate shattered that assumption completely. Number 4. Theo Chocolate. Over the last decade, companies like Theo helped transform dark chocolate into something bigger than dessert. Their marketing focused on sustainability, ethical sourcing, fair trade partnerships, and environmental responsibility. Consumers weren't just buying chocolate anymore. They were buying the feeling that their purchase supported something morally better than giant corporate candy companies. But as contamination concerns spread across the dark chocolate industry, many shoppers started asking a different question entirely. How much transparency actually exists behind the branding? Ethical messaging can tell consumers where cacao was sourced and how farmers were treated, but that still doesn't automatically explain heavy metal testing standards, batch variability, or long-term contamination monitoring. For many buyers, those details remained surprisingly difficult to find. That disconnect created growing frustration among health-conscious consumers who believed premium ethical brands would naturally provide the highest level of transparency. Instead, many realized they were often relying on trust, branding, and assumptions rather than publicly available testing data. And once shoppers begin questioning transparency, every label suddenly looks different. Fair trade logos, sustainability claims, rainforest imagery, words like ethical and responsibly sourced. Consumers started wondering whether they were seeing meaningful information or simply better marketing. Number 3. Tony's Chocolonely. Few chocolate companies built a stronger ethical reputation than Tony's Chocolonely. Bright packaging, unevenly divided chocolate squares symbolizing inequality in the cocoa industry. Bold promises about fighting exploitation and creating slave-free chocolate supply chains. For many consumers, Tony's became the brand people pointed to when they wanted proof that ethical chocolate could actually exist. But over time, even Tony's faced criticism from activists and watchdog groups questioning how realistic slave-free chocolate claims truly were inside such a massive global cocoa system. The controversy exposed something uncomfortable about the entire chocolate industry. Supply chains are so complex that even companies actively trying to improve conditions may still struggle to fully control every level of production. Cocoa often passes through multiple farms, brokers, exporters, processors, and distributors before it ever reaches consumers. That reality shocked many shoppers because Tony's wasn't marketed like ordinary candy. It positioned itself almost like a movement. Consumers trusted the brand emotionally, not just nutritionally, and when criticism emerged, it forced many people to confront a larger truth. In the chocolate industry, even the good guys may operate inside systems that remain deeply difficult to monitor completely. Number 2. Godiva Dark Chocolate. For decades, Godiva represented luxury chocolate in America. Gold boxes, elegant ribbons, expensive mall boutiques. Consumers bought Godiva for anniversaries, holidays, Valentine's Day, and corporate gifts because the brand felt European, sophisticated, and high-end. People weren't just paying for chocolate, they were paying for the image of premium craftsmanship. But lawsuits and consumer complaints over the years exposed growing frustration surrounding how some chocolate companies market themselves. In Godiva's case, controversy emerged over the way Belgian heritage was emphasized in branding, while many products sold in the United States were manufactured elsewhere. That revelation left some customers feeling misled, especially considering the premium prices attached to the brand's European image. The controversy also highlighted how strongly packaging influences consumer psychology. Elegant gold wrapping creates the expectation of superior quality before anyone even tastes the chocolate. Luxury branding makes consumers assume stricter sourcing, cleaner ingredients, and better standards automatically exist behind the scenes. But dark chocolate testing controversies shattered that assumption for many shoppers. Suddenly, people started questioning whether they were truly paying for better chocolate or simply paying for better storytelling. Number 1. Cadbury Dark Chocolate. For millions of people, Cadbury wasn't just chocolate, it was childhood. Easter baskets, holiday candy, family traditions, and the unmistakable purple wrapper that generations instantly recognized. Consumers trusted Cadbury because the brand felt familiar, comforting, and timeless. But over the years, longtime fans began noticing something strange. The chocolate didn't taste the same anymore. After major corporate acquisitions changed ownership and production methods, complaints about ingredient quality, sweetness, texture, and overall flavor started spreading online. Some consumers described American versions as waxier, sweeter, and more processed than the versions sold overseas. Others accused major chocolate companies of slowly replacing higher quality ingredients with cheaper alternatives, while maintaining the same nostalgic branding and premium image. And that may be the biggest theme connecting this entire dark chocolate controversy together. Consumers often buy chocolate emotionally, not analytically. They trust memories, familiar wrappers, childhood nostalgia, luxury branding, health claims. But once contamination reports, ingredient controversies, and sourcing questions started going viral, many people realized they had never actually examined what was inside these products at all. They simply trusted the brands automatically. But here's the part most people never hear. Not every chocolate company failed consumers. Some brands actually prioritize testing, transparency, cleaner ingredients, and ethical sourcing. And if you still love dark chocolate, these next 5 brands may be the safest options currently on store shelves. Number 5. Endangered species. Chocolate. Unlike many mainstream chocolate companies, Endangered Species Chocolate built much of its reputation around transparency and ingredient quality. The company promotes third-party testing, simpler formulations, and sustainability efforts while also donating a portion of profits toward wildlife conservation. For consumers exhausted by contamination headlines and vague corporate messaging, that transparency immediately stands out. The bars themselves also feel noticeably different from heavily processed mainstream candy. Rich cacao flavor, cleaner texture, less artificial sweetness coating the mouth afterward. Many dark chocolate fans describe the taste as more natural and less engineered for extreme sweetness. And unlike some companies that rely mostly on emotional branding, Endangered Species openly discusses sourcing and testing standards in ways many larger corporations still avoid. For health-conscious consumers, that kind of transparency matters more now than ever. After years of confusing headlines about heavy metals and contamination, shoppers increasingly want proof instead of promises. They want brands willing to discuss sourcing, testing, and ingredients directly instead of hiding behind words like premium or natural. And for many dark chocolate fans, that shift in transparency may end up changing the industry permanently. Number 4. Equal exchange. Most chocolate corporations operate the same way. Executives at the top, suppliers at the bottom, and consumers stuck somewhere in the middle trying to figure out who to trust. But Equal Exchange built its reputation differently. The company operates as a worker-owned cooperative with a heavy focus on direct trade relationships and long-term partnerships with cocoa farmers. That structure immediately separates it from many mainstream candy brands because the marketing focuses less on luxury and more on traceability. Equal Exchange openly discusses sourcing relationships, fair trade practices, and cooperative farming systems instead of relying entirely on emotional nostalgia or premium imagery. For many consumers, that level of openness feels increasingly rare in the chocolate industry. The chocolate itself also reflects a different philosophy: stronger cacao flavor, less overpowering sweetness, simpler ingredient lists. The bars taste more like actual cacao and less like engineered candy products. And after years of controversy surrounding contamination, ultra-processing, and misleading branding, many consumers are beginning to prioritize companies that feel more transparent and less corporate. Equal Exchange may not dominate supermarket shelves the way massive candy companies do, but for shoppers looking for cleaner sourcing and ethical practices, that's exactly the appeal. Number 3. Taza chocolate. Most chocolate companies spend millions trying to make their products smoother, creamier, and more uniform. Taza went in the opposite direction completely. Their stone-ground chocolate has a rougher texture, a stronger cacao flavor, and a gritty finish that immediately feels different from mainstream candy bars. For some consumers, the first bite is surprising. For others, it tastes closer to what real cacao may have originally resembled before decades of industrial processing transformed chocolate into ultra-smooth candy. That difference comes from the way Taza processes its cacao beans. Instead of heavily refining the chocolate for maximum smoothness, the company uses traditional stone-ground methods designed to preserve more of the cacao's natural texture and flavor profile. The result is darker, more intense, and far less artificial tasting than many mass-market chocolate products. And in a food industry increasingly dominated by emulsifiers, stabilizers, and engineered textures, that simplicity stands out immediately. Taza has also promoted direct trade sourcing and independent testing standards as contamination concerns in dark chocolate continue attracting attention. For many consumers, that transparency matters just as much as taste now. After years of hearing words like premium and healthy attached to products later linked to controversy, shoppers increasingly want proof that companies are actually monitoring sourcing and quality standards closely. And for dark chocolate fans tired of overly processed candy pretending to be health food, Taza feels like a complete reset from the modern chocolate industry. Number 2. Alter Eco. At first glance, Alter Eco looks almost too perfect. Organic ingredients, fair trade certification, regenerative agriculture claims, carbon-neutral messaging, compostable packaging. The brand feels carefully designed for consumers who want every grocery purchase to align with health and environmental values simultaneously. But unlike many companies that stop at emotional marketing, Alter Eco has leaned heavily into transparency surrounding sourcing and production standards. The company openly discusses cacao origins, regenerative farming practices, and ingredient sourcing in far more detail than many mainstream competitors. And in the middle of growing consumer anxiety surrounding heavy metals and contamination concerns, that level of openness has become a major selling point. Consumers no longer want vague promises about quality. They want actual information about where cacao comes from, how it's processed, and what standards exist behind the scenes. The chocolate itself also feels noticeably less processed than mainstream candy bars. Cleaner ingredient lists, strong cacao flavor, less artificial sweetness overwhelming the palate. Even the texture melts differently because the bars rely more heavily on cocoa butter instead of cheaper fillers and stabilizers commonly used throughout the candy industry. For many shoppers, Alter Eco represents what dark chocolate was always supposed to be: simpler, cleaner, and closer to real food instead of engineered candy designed entirely around sugar cravings. Number 1. Shu Kitchen. Few chocolate brands became more popular in health food stores faster than Hu Kitchen. The packaging looked minimal and modern. The ingredient lists were dramatically shorter than traditional candy bars. No refined sugar, no soy lecithin, no emulsifiers, no artificial additives. The bars were marketed less like candy and more like wellness products for consumers trying to escape ultra-processed food completely. But unlike many wellness brands that rely mostly on influencer marketing and vague, clean eating language, Hu built much of its reputation around ingredient transparency and simpler formulations. Consumers could actually read the label without needing to decode chemical-sounding additives or mystery flavorings. Organic cacao, organic cocoa butter, coconut sugar, vanilla. That simplicity became incredibly appealing as more shoppers started questioning what was really hiding inside mainstream food products. And psychologically, Hu arrived at exactly the right moment. Consumers were becoming exhausted by contamination headlines, deceptive health marketing, and ultra-processed ingredients dominating grocery stores. They wanted food that felt understandable again, food that looked closer to actual ingredients instead of industrial chemistry experiments. For many dark chocolate fans, Hu became the brand that represented a possible escape from everything wrong with the modern candy industry. Cleaner sourcing, simpler ingredients, more transparency, and after everything consumers learned about dark chocolate over the last few years, that simplicity suddenly became one of the most valuable selling points in food. And there you have it. From luxury brands facing contamination concerns to childhood favorites built on nostalgia and marketing, the dark chocolate industry suddenly looks a lot more complicated than most consumers ever imagined. The biggest lesson here isn't that all chocolate is dangerous, it's that words like organic, premium, and healthy don't automatically guarantee transparency, cleaner sourcing, or lower contamination levels. If this video opened your eyes, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Face the Foods because we're just getting started. From hidden ingredients and food industry loopholes to the products companies hope consumers never question, we're exposing it all. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.